Greetings and welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. As an extension of my Instagram page, Cerebral Women, this podcast offers insights into the visual art world. I interview artists, mainly artists of color and female artists who will freely articulate what inspires their creativity. In addition, you'll hear interesting perspectives from dedicated art professionals who work with artists and the art institutions that feature them. I'm confident that collectively, these individuals will indeed stimulate your mind as they do our eyes. Please know these interviews are conducted in my Manhattan apartment, so please forgive the background sounds of city life. Welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. This episode features interdisciplinary artist Natia Lemay. She is based in Toronto, in Ontario, Canada. Through personal stories, she interrogates the intersections between the mind, the body, and space to understand how these experiences relate to a broader cultural context. Natia has exhibited widely throughout North America. She was selected for the 2024 Fountainhead Residency in Miami and the 2022 Royal Drawing School Residency in Scotland. She was awarded the National Trust Prize at Expo Chicago in 2024. Her work is collected by the High Museum in Atlanta, the Art Gallery of Ontario, the Minneapolis Museum of American Art, the Montclair Museum of Art, to name a few. She received her BFA from Ontario College of Art and Design and her MFA from Yale School of Art. Enjoy this episode featuring interdisciplinary artist Natia Lemay. Natia, welcome to my platform. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. Let's begin with, when did you discover your artistic passion?
I think that it's always a challenging question because for me, art was always part of our daily lives. So I didn't really think of it as like an artistic passion. It just more felt as if like embedded into our household. So my father was an artist. My mother made a lot of crafts. She made dream catchers and things like that. And I used to go into the woods and find twigs and sticks and whittle them away and build tree houses. And all of those to me are forms of art, but they were really just part of everyday life. But I think that the shift really happened when I started painting about 8 years ago. I've only been painting for about 8 years. I started at 31. And as I made more work, as I painted more, it became deeper. So it became something that I needed to do instead of something that I just did as a pastime. Yeah, so it was just something that was inherent and something that we did all the time, but it wasn't until I started putting paint on canvas that it became something that I felt I could really call artistry.
How do you define your practice?
Yeah, I would say that my practice is interdisciplinary with an autoethnographic approach. So autoethnographic, and I like this term because I think it really defines, it legitimizes something that is often not legitimized in the art world. So the approach is to research that connects directly to personal experience. That's the auto part of it. And we're looking at how these personal experiences relate to like broader cultural and social and political context. So for me, I think that I really hone into my lived experience in a very direct way and then use that to analyze the world around me. And I think that's what a lot of artists do, but I feel as if when we're not working from a very research specific point, it often seems less important or less valuable. If I'm not pulling from an archive or like very specific cultural references or like canonical references, a lot of people don't see the value in it in the same way, especially academia. But I do like autoethnography as a term to legitimize working from a lived experience in order to understand the world around us.
And are there concepts or thoughts that connect the work?
Yeah, so there are quite a few techniques and things that connect the work for me. I think that the color black, first as a catalyst, as something that just fits in between this idea of consciousness and matter. So black is the deepest concept that I think connects the work. For me, black is the color of contradiction, right? It has so many different meanings symbolically and metaphorically around the world. So it can be both and or. It's both absence and presence in its existence. If we're thinking about, before light, there's darkness, like it's nothingness, but it's also the absorption of all light, all colors, when we're thinking of it as a pigment. So in itself, it's contradictory. I think black acts as a site of reflection, a space of surrender from which like our dreams and our memories are held and shaped. So our unconscious thoughts, our mind. So for me, when I'm using the color black, I'm really trying to emphasize this fluid experience that sometimes can feel contradictory, which I think that in a POC experience, a Black experience, or a multiracial experience, which is mine, this like living through contradictions and trying to find your way through that. So for me, like a common concept or a theme that really connects it is I'm really looking to challenge the boundaries between the visual and conceptual perception of Black and darkness. Because I think that we see Black and we think one thing, but I really want to challenge what people see when they look at Black in order to rewire the way we think about the term Blackness or Black folks, right? So I'm also thinking about topics of intergenerational trauma, like epigenetics, I think in the more scientific way. I hate that I always have to add on like a legitimate scientific field in order to validate it, because my work is really just about intuition, instincts, and following threads and lines and then creating a framework outside of that. But yeah, so if we're thinking about topics of like epigenetics or intergenerational trauma, I'm really thinking about how we absorb and transmit experience and how it affects myself, future generation, and past generations. So again, Black as this color that acts as a metaphor, a symbol of absorption, of something grief, of loss, of something missing, but also something found, of illumination, of hiding, of invisibility, as a way to describe these things that we inherit, these things that we pass along, and the things that we live with inside of ourselves. So I think that, Black is always going to be that main theme. It's always shifting, always changing, but everywhere.
Yeah, it's a beautiful color. How do you feel your art professors impacted your practice?
I think that I felt the most impact from a professor that I had when I was at OCAD. Her name is Eileen Sola. She is an art activist and a community advocate, as well as a professor there. She was the chair at the time. And for me, a little bit about my background. So both my parents were addicts. My father passed away a few years ago. My mother has been in active addiction for quite a while. My father was illiterate. There was not really any academia or a deeper thought. We didn't really talk about mental health. We didn't really talk about a lot of these things, but I really noticed that I was missing, and this is part of my childhood trauma, there was not a lot of attention on me, right? Like I was an afterthought. I think a lot of kids that grow up in certain cycles of poverty and violence, they're not really attended to. And people didn't really hear me or try to hear me or understand me. So there was often this feeling of like loneliness and alienation as a child. And up until I was 32, I didn't realize how much I was seeking someone to see me. And Eileen really did that. So when I was in second year, when I'd ask questions, she really thoughtfully answered them. When I had an idea, she really pushed me to pursue it. When I wanted to curate my first art show, she ran through like how to do it, how to put together a press release, and how to put a show together. And when I wanted to learn how to paint something, she really took the time to like teach me how to do it, even if it was outside of the class. And that level of like attention and investment, I should say, that level of investment in my success really shifted everything for me. And I was like, oh, I can actually do this. People actually want to hear what I have to say. They want to see me succeed. They want to see me do well. And that coming from somebody outside of my family, from someone I didn't know, I think was a huge shifting point for me. When I got into Yale, it was very different. I think the challenges that I got there was more like, you can do better. Like, you can be a better painter. You can think deeper. And every time someone has to like challenges my capability, I'm like, bet, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a better painting. You're right. This sucks. So they're like pushing me always like, you can do better. It could be better. You can work harder. And I really appreciated that. So I think the two different types of professors really propelled me into where I was. One, the attention, the investment, and the second, the really pursuit of something more. You can be more, you can do more. And I think that really shifted my whole trajectory of my life.
And how has your technique developed or changed over the years?
Yeah, I think that when I first started painting, I wasn't painting to actually make anything. I think that I was just painting as a form of meditation. I was just pushing paint on a canvas. And yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. like 30, 31 years old, buying paint at the Dollarama, the dollar store. And I'm just like, I'm just going to sit here and do this. I had no clue what I was doing. Nothing about form, nothing about shape, composition. And I managed to get into art school with that, which crazy. But early in the practice, like when I, like how it's transformed or my technique as it developed, I would say is learning, obviously, through school. You learn about composition, you learn about brushwork, you learn about color theory. But even for the first few years of painting, those weren't really things that were on my mind. I was really just trying to share ideas and get a part of myself out there, right? Like I wasn't really focused on composition and color. I was like, I just need to get, this is pouring out of me. I need to put it down on something. But over the past few years, I've really began to embrace brushwork. It's an integral part of my practice now. I can't build the scenes that I'm building without brushwork. Really embracing texture, layering to start creating more depth and movement in my work. And I think that by becoming more experimental, allowing spontaneity, allowing drips to emerge, has really evolved the work in a beautiful way. So I think that every artist is always trying to make better paintings. Well, I hope that every painter is trying to make better paintings. So,
what is the role of drawing in your work?
My work does not have drawing. I find it unusual. I don't draw. If I draw, it's its own work. I feel like drawing in itself is an independent practice. For me, if I have to draw something, I feel like that's complete. I don't sketch before I make paintings. I'm not, laying out a composition or planning anything prior to that. I feel as if once I start drawing what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, then I don't feel the urgency to paint it. It ends up becoming its own work. So I draw very infrequently. It's not as a huge part of my practice as it probably should be. I will say, though, I do love etching as a form of printmaking, which in itself is kind of like drawing. So I think that if anything, the act of drawing gets shifted to something else, but it's not a big part of my practice. I need to work on it. And it's free time. I'm like, I'm going to sketch this person. I do it. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is not better. It's not helping. It's not making it better. I don't like to work more. It's not more complicated. If anything, it just feels more clinical and calculated that way. And I prefer to avoid that.
Yeah, play it as it lays. Go what comes natural. Early on, do you recall the artists that influenced you?
Yeah, I think that I was thrown into the art world. So I had never stepped foot in a gallery or a museum until my second year of art school. So I hadn't really seen a lot of art. I think early on, I was really struck by artists like, I think all Black youth and Black people that are looking at art for the first time, or Indigenous people like Kent Monkman, they like, Kehinde Wiley, they like, Amy Sherald, Cara Walker, because I think that's like most of our first introductions to art. It's just this like visual representation of our identity in a very classical, well-executed form. Again, we were talking earlier about entry points. I think that those are my entry points. Oh, okay, they paint the skin really nicely. It's regal, it's elegant, it's critical. It's, seeing our skin and our forms and our bodies in these spaces was always very powerful. But as I got older and looked at more art, then my preference of what artists really impacted me shifted drastically. I went more to the conceptual artist line and my peers, but I think a lot of emerging artists have the same influences.
When do you know work is finished?
There's a quote, and I think that work is never finished, it's only abandoned. I don't know who said it. And I really do truly feel that. I think that there's always this instinct to do more, to make it better, to fix it. And I think for me, I just get to the point where I'm like, that's good enough. It's good enough. Don't touch anymore. Because then you overwork. You overwork it and it gets worse. So I think that you just have to follow your instincts and be like, I've done enough to say what I wanted to say, and then stop there and let everything else resolve itself.
Mm-hmm. And when do the titles of the work enter the creative process?
Titles are always last. I think that part of my process, part of the process that I enjoy the most is the analysis after making a painting. So I know a lot of people go into the work with a very specific composition or thing that they're thinking of, that they're trying to execute. I think that I'm trying to just create more of a feeling and emotion rather than literal objects or spaces or figures or people in the room. It's more so I'm following my intuition. And then after I'm done the painting, I sit with it and then I start to recognize things that are in the work that I subconsciously or unconsciously put in or let's say if I painted it a very specific way, or it's very heavy in the work, or it's at the forefront or falling into the background. So this practice of analyzing the work after I painted it allows me to see the things that I might not have been aware of when I was making it, and then the title comes. So for example, I just completed a really big piece with 2 figures. It's about 10 feet tall, and I had no title. It took me about a year to paint it, and I titled it The Space in Between. And because I was thinking of like the relationship between these 2 figures, one with a closed fist and a very focused look, the other with their head in their hands. And it hit me, it's like the space in between 2 sides of ourselves, the space in between people, but also that space in between sadness and rage, and like sorrow and rage. And you just are always in this, like, riding this line of angry crying, because you're like, what the hell is happening, right? Yeah, so I don't really know what the title is going to be until after it's done, and I sit with it and look at it, and then I'm like, oh, it kind of clicks. And that's how the work is titled. Sometimes they're untitled. Sometimes I just can't come up with anything. Maybe it'll come back in the future, but...
And do you listen to music while you're working?
I don't. I am an audiobook and reruns of old TV show girly. Any audiobooks, I mostly love science fiction and fantasy, but, you know, like TV shows, Law and Order or The Office, like just like junky sitcoms that can play in the background that I don't really need to look at or pay attention to. I love music. So I find myself when I listen to music that I'll be like, oh, this song will play. And I'm like, now I need to hear this song. And I'll start like making a playlist. And I spend 90% of the time searching for songs on my phone instead of painting. So I just need something that's going to run without my intervention in the background. And yeah, it can't be music.
What do you enjoy most about your practice?
The discovery, I think. Yeah, the self-discovery is what I enjoy most. Like that moment when something unexpected happens and it works really well. The meditation that comes with painting, like allowing me space to process and reflect my feelings and emotion. There's like such joy and fulfillment with finding, like I said, finding these through lines, finding moments that I might not be aware of that are being brought to light on the canvas. So I went through a long period of time where I was only painting myself at a very specific age. I realized like it was like my relationship to myself and my children because they were at that age. And yeah, so it's like finding these through lines where I'm like, oh, I really need to hone in on this. I'm thinking about my kids a lot. I'm really thinking about my relationship to self, to intimacy, to love, to hope. And finding those in the work is probably my favorite moment.
Do you feel Black art can be defined?
No. Well, actually, one of the things about my work that I think a lot of people miss is it is in itself satire. If you look at genre art and it's as a definition, historical genre art, and even reducing that down just to be everyday within the sphere of genre art, because there's the everyday and there's still life and landscape, historical and all that stuff. So the everyday, those good genre paintings always have a little bit of satire. So for me, a lot of people look at the Black, and as we previously discussed, there's all these meanings for me symbolically. But on the flip side of that, it is quite literally Black art. So when I say that I don't think Black art can be defined, I do if the color black is in it, because then it's Black art, right? But as like a cultural expression or like a label to just describe a non-monolithic, a huge demographic of people that come from a variety of backgrounds with different lived experiences, different class and social statuses. No, I don't think there's one overarching definition for Black art. And I think that when we place this umbrella onto Black art to describe an entire group of people, we're doing it in a disservice. We're reducing it. We're not putting it up against the same critical framework that we do with other types of art and other groups of artists. So if it's literally Black, yes, it can be defined as Black art. But outside of that, like, yeah.
When people look at your work, what do you want them to see?
It's funny, I had this conversation with someone the other day, and for me, I realized that I can't control, none of us can control what anyone is going to read from the work. It's impossible. So it's not as if I have a very specific goal in mind. What I'm more interested in is how people reveal themselves through my work. So I think that I don't want them to see anything specific, but I am interested in the social element of it when people come back to me and tell me what they're feeling. And it is a kind of revelation or a revealing of what that person is thinking of. For example, I had somebody once come to me and say, oh, I really love the cop car that I saw outside of the window in one of your paintings. And I'm like, I would never paint a cop car. I wouldn't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just not the conversation that I'm trying to have. But the fact that they saw a cop car out the window tells me all that I need to know about what they perceive to be my Black experience, right? And that to me is more interesting than me trying to define or lead a conversation in any one way. At the end of the day, the work that I make for me is always very personal and deeply reflective of my lived experience. And I know that people are going to project onto that work, whatever they decide to project onto it. So I'm more interested in what they say about the work to me or to other people and how they reveal themselves within those conversations. Yeah, I find it interesting how people would just like project a lot of racial things, a lot of, very specific conversations. And I'm like, okay, that's great. That's what you see. Cool, right? And it's like, now you know how to move to that space. You're like, that hypervigilance, I think, is, a Black woman never really goes away. And I'm just like, okay, I'm learning about society and the social. Again, it's that autoethnography, right? I'm using my personal experience to kind of learn more about society and cultures in different classes and how they perceive me and the world around me.
And on that note, what do you feel is the purpose of art?
Oh, that's hard. I think that art is everything. I think that art doesn't always have a purpose. I think that it's necessary. I think that art brings value to life and beauty and creativity. And yeah, I think that it's everything. Art is everywhere. It's in our architecture. It's in the way we cook our food. It's in the way we play games with each other and what we see and what we watch and what we consume. I don't think that there's any direct purpose. I think that art always has its own intended purpose, but I think that it's necessary. It's just a necessary part of the world. It is a mirror in some sense as to what's happening around us, but at the same time, it can be absurd. It can be nothing, which, in turn has its own value. So I don't think art can be defined. I don't think there's any specific purpose. I just think it's part of life. Art is part of life.
I love that answer. What are you excited about right now?
I'm really excited to be back home in Toronto. I'm really excited about that. As you know, obviously I did my MFA at Yale, so I was in Connecticut for 2 years. And then I did a year after that, going back and forth between New Haven and Connecticut. I did my MFA with all of my 3 children by myself in New Haven. So me and my 3 kids moved to the States, never stepped foot in the US before, and tried to do the MFA thing. It was so hard.
I bet it was.
But it wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done, right? Like, it was challenging, but it wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done. But after I did the 2 years in the States with the kids, me and the kids' father made out an arrangement where I would do 2 weeks in Connecticut, 2 weeks in Toronto. So when I was home for the 2 weeks, that's when my kids were with me. When they were with their dad, that's when I was in the US working. And I decided to move back to Toronto full-time in August. And I'm really excited about the new advancements in my practice, the new things that I'm finding that I'm painting and themes that are happening in my work that are related to being home, being in Canada, being on this land where, my ancestors have lived for generations. And yeah, and the season, I missed winter so much. I'm like, I missed the snow and the cold, and I miss autumn and springtime and building deeper connections with my family. I think I'm really excited about that and, reconnecting with everyone that I've been away from and rebuilding my community in Toronto and finding, other artists out here that are thinking about work the same way I am or in different ways. And yeah, those new relationships and new community is something that I'm really excited about.
Congratulations on all of that. If you weren't a visual artist, what other career path do you think you would have chosen?
I actually have no idea. I've had a million jobs. I started working at 13 and paying rent at 13. I've cleaned tables. I have sold ice cream. I have sold insurance. I have done door-to-door water heater sales. Like, I have done, I know, super sketch, right? Super sketchy, but that's what I was just trying to get out of public housing and have a career. I tried it all. I went to hair school. And I also studied as phlebotomist. Like, I had every job under the book. And like, some of them I was really successful at, but none of them were fulfilling. So I really don't know what I would do outside of painting. I would probably be hopping from job to job, trying to find something that was fulfilling. But yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah. Hey, I'm glad you ended up where you are.
And me too. I don't know where we'd be,
This has been a fabulous, uplifting conversation. And this is our last question. How do you want your art to impact the way people think?
I want my art to have people slow down in their read. I want people to slow down in their perception and their their conceptions or their preconceived notions of Blackness, of identity, of art. I want them to slow down, because I think that we're often, human beings in themselves are always looking for patterns, right? It allows us to understand the world around us. So we're always looking to have patterns and have things line up with what we think is true. And I really just want people to slow down and, give yourself time to change your mind, to understand that, the world is fluid. It's always evolving. It's always changing. And there's always room for growth, for hope, for something new, to be illuminated, for things to fall back into shadows. Like, I think that is what I really want to impact people. I want them to slow down. Don't jump to conclusions. Why don't we hear somebody out? Let's have a conversation. Let's get to know them. And then let's make a decision and assessment based off of that. Yeah, I think people are too quick to say that they have the answer instead of accepting that we all really know very little.
And sometimes too quick to judge.
Too quick to judge. Have a dialogue, have a conversation, ask people questions, get to know people, right? Instead of just thinking you know people. Yeah, I think that rehumanizing our connections is really important to me. And that's something that I really want people to take away from the work.
Well, I was totally drawn to the work, and I'm so pleased that I was introduced to you and your practice. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This was fantastic.
Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.